I'm calling the meeting to order, okay. It is September 27th, 2021 at 4:08. Calling the joint meeting of RCDC and the strike force. Do a roll call.
Yes.
Emily Dorn here.
Wallace Grainer here.
Brooke Brown here.
Ryan Clinton.
Meredith Knight.
Tom Farrell.
Becky Kittleman. Becky Sheehan.
Ronald Hasso.
And we have some residents here,
Yeah.
so, public comment.
You want me to, okay.
Yeah, just,
Anyone here for public comment? If so, please go ahead and take the microphone. No?
seeing any?
Okay. No public comment.
Okay, number 2. Oops, sorry.
No, you're good. So this is the working session regarding coordination between RCDC, which is Rollingwood Community Development Corporation, and the Comprehensive Plan Strike Force regarding implementation of recommendations.
Right,
Lots of words there.
yeah. If you don't mind, I'll open it up.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so the RCDC wanted to try to get with us on that. So what can we do for y'all on that? Let me just put it that way, straight up.
I believe what we wanted to do is have a discussion and understanding about, as RCDC moves in the direction of development of the commercial corridor and development opportunities for the city, what is being discussed within the strike force, and I've watched a bit of it, but having a more community conversation on is what is being implemented or recommended in the strike force. Is that going to hinder or promote corporations, businesses coming to Rollingwood?
Okay.
And that is not to say that is happening. It's more of a discussion on what is happening so that we can get our arms around that. I think we all know that economic development of the city is vital and important, and if we need to make sure that we're both, in my humble opinion, that both hands are talking to each other and that we're not doing separate, the trains aren't leaving the station doing separate activities. So
Right.
that's a starting point. But Becky and Pat, please weigh in.
So we are making some recommendations on the future land use of BK's Road.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, would you like to start with that? And then I'll jump in or we all jump in. This is a work session,
Yeah.
so any questions or anything, it's like an open house, if you would. So-
What page are you going to start on?
Well,
I work with page numbers really well.
That's a
I
good
didn't-
idea.
I didn't alert Brian to
No,
that.
I
in all
was
honesty.
not given notice of this, but that's all right. That's all right. I'm a lawyer. I'm used to
Well,
this.
well, Ryan, if I gave you notice, it'd be the first time, and
That's
it would probably
true.
shock you, so I don't know.
He's good at
It would set a precedent,
don't-
Speaking from the top.
I don't want to, have a precedent that you can't meet again. So that's fine. I think, let's see, where future land use is on page 27 of the attachment to the minute, or to the agenda on the city website. If anybody,
Say that's in the agenda for the strike force meeting.
That's right.
Immediately after at 4:30, so it wasn't in the RCDC agenda. I'm happy to pull it up or print any copies if anybody would like to look at it.
couldn't hurt to pull it up.
I can pull it up, it can't be hard for us to see it.
Yeah. It would take probably longer than you have in mind to go through everything, but the first thing we did was that Pegasus essentially put together a report of the current land use of the commercial corridor and in the residential areas of Rollingwood. And so that kind of gave us a roadmap of what the existing uses are, and that's in the chapter right before, I think. Yes. That ends at page 26, right before 27, and that just kind of gives you an idea of what the existing land use is in the commercial corridor and the residential corridors. And what we tried to do as far as the future land use is, one, be extremely receptive and invite as much community participation as we could, because we didn't want this to be our plan, we wanted this to be the community's plan. And so in addition to the initial survey that went out, which was the survey that Pegasus sent out that I think a lot of people saw and answered, we did a second round of a survey which was itself a product of the public citizen communication process, because we drafted it, redrafted it, took more public participation, redrafted it again. It probably went through 10 variations before Tom called time on us, and fortunately euthanized that process, and so we were able to move it on. And we did receive a very large number of, I don't remember the raw number, but it was a very good number of responses. Of course, there are a lot of people who didn't respond, but there were a very good number of people who did. And then what we tried to do also was we went through the existing commercial corridor pretty much lot by lot to try to figure out what the current restrictions on the lots were, what the current impairments were to doing anything on the lot. Wally was very helpful in that part of the process, being a person who was publicly very personally affected by the current limitations on existing lots. But we went kind of lot by lot. We walked through each lot. We're trying to figure out what were the existing restrictions on the lot. How would changing those restrictions affect the adjacent property owners? Because we're trying to balance both needs, both the need of the city to be fair to its commercial property owners, but at the same time also be fair to the residential property owners. Because if citizens purchase their home with particular rules of development, knowing that those rules of development were on the homes that were immediately adjacent to them or very close to being adjacent to them, then we feel like it was only fair to expect that those rules not be radically changed to negatively impact or impose the cost of development unfairly on the residences who are right next to them. At the end of the day, what we came to is somewhat of a compromise, and that is that there's a currently commercial, and I'm speaking just to commercial development. Currently, commercial development has restrictions on what they can do at the front of the lot, and we've essentially eliminated the setbacks on the front of the lots. So that gives commercial owners another 25 or 30 feet, somewhere in there, to develop essentially up close to Bee Caves Road. So they can develop as close to Bee Caves Road essentially as they want to. I think we put in a 5-foot buffer or something like that, and noted that TxDOT may have some right of way, and there might be some utility rights of way in that first 5 or 10 feet. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is essentially get rid of the setbacks, which were really a 1970s/1980s style of development, which is that everything sits back behind a big parking lot. It's not the way that we understood developers to want to do it today. It's not really in vogue, as far as nobody wants a giant parking lot sitting between the road, either the consumers or the developers. And so we got rid of that. We didn't think that had any negative impact on the people who live nearby. That was essentially an easy win to give to the commercial property owners. With respect to the back setbacks, that was a much harder analysis to go through. The existing rear setback is 100 feet from a property line that borders a residential property. And that was implemented. Tom, you want to fill in on exactly when that was? It was part of the development of the Endeavor lot.
2000.
1 or 2?
Yeah, it was right
Okay.
at the end of 2001.
Right. So the purpose of that was Endeavor had agreed to some restrictions, and the city at the time thought it was only fair to put those restrictions on everybody and not just Endeavor's lot. But what we learned from Wally and from others who were similarly situated is that 100-foot barrier made many lots effectively unusable at all. Some of the lots were severely impaired but not unusable. And in addition,
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
When you say unusable, what is that? What do
well,
you
there might not
define
be
that as?
enough
Okay.
left
Okay.
to really be able to use well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so some of it was unusable, some of it was there's not enough left to
Okay.
really be used.
And Ryan, just one,
Sure.
sorry to interrupt. It doesn't mean that if you have a building there, you're not gonna be grandfathered.
Sure.
Because that's an important consideration. There is gonna be a building at, on BK's Road, there at the curve, at the end of what I call, it's not the street, but Ridgewood, where it used to go down to BK's Road. There is a building gonna be built there, and it's grandfathered. Plans have been in place forever. Well,
Right.
Yeah, one point of interest, practically everything on the north side of Bee Caves Road was developed during the time of a 30-foot rear setback. And the only problem I see with increasing it much beyond your 30-foot because of the topography of some of the lots, a 75-foot setback is onerous, and when accompanied with what's talking about in the commercial corridor recommendation, 75 feet from the edge of the residence, the clearing of native vegetation shall be prohibited in 75 feet. There isn't any at this time because it is what it is. In addition, the city should require replanting of previously cleared spaces within the 75-foot edge of any residence and the edge of any building or any commercial lot, which means effectively this is now back to being a green space. So if you build your building to the front, the area you would normally place the parking, you got 75 foot of it is taken away from you. And as I said earlier at the last meeting, I think you've effectively diminished substantially the potentiality of any developer being able to come in at the prices of the land on Bee Caves Road and to build a high quality store building of 2,000 square feet out of, like I said, you probably could put 25,000 square foot of footprint on my property. To get a return on that, you're looking at trying to get rent of between $150 and $200 a square foot. That's dreamland. So I think effectively this particular part of this ordinance is contra to maybe the commercial development people's idea of how to bring some people in to develop. And I don't particularly like it. But by the way, it doesn't affect me because in the 75 feet from the back of my lot, my buildings all sit on little pads because of the slope down. It's just cut. I've got just enough for a building in that 30-foot setback, and then my parking lot is in the front. Residential, a retail strip probably would take advantage of the short setback in front, but they gotta have room for the cars, and parking commercial for retail, you're looking, I'm 4 to 1, four parking places for every 1,000 square foot of my building. On a commercial retail basis, 6 to 1 is probably a kind of a minimum number if you've got any kind of a high volume merchant. And 6 to 1 you can't use the back 75 foot of my lot for anything but these pads, and to have to use elevators to get the cars up on them. So it's become quite restrictive.
I think
So-
the regulations the city has on parking, Wally, are, Kerry, what's the ratio on commercial? I know what it is on office, but retail,
For how many parking spaces?
yes.
It's one space for every 250 square feet of
One.
occupiable building space.
Well,
Yeah,
that's basically a commercial. I'm at
Yeah,
1 per
4 per
250.
thousand.
I'm 4 per thousand. That's
Yeah.
1 per 250.
You met that.
But the retail, you get a lot more people in and out than I have in an office building.
Right.
So-
I've developed strip centers is my point. I'm not a
Just
novice.
so everybody, for the record, some people don't know this. Wally, I can't believe people don't know you, but if they don't,
Yes.
Wally owns the Palisades on B Caves Road, and he's our commercial liaison, commercial representative on the.
Well, I've been a commercial developer since 1957. I'm 85 years old and I go to work every day and I love it.
So, so getting back to the process that we did, and you can tell, you know, not everybody's happy with the compromise. And there are citizens like myself who, even though I was the one who proposed the compromise, I will be personally negatively affected by the compromise. Because it is more likely that a two-story building will be built behind my house because of the compromise, because we're giving another 50 feet, essentially 25 in the front, 25 in the back, than is currently allowed. Wally's comparing not existing code to our proposal, but code at least 3 decades ago to current standards. So, so getting back to the compromise, so the compromise that we came up with was give 25 additional feet essentially in the front to eliminate the front setback, give another 25 feet in the back to move the setback in the back from 100 feet to 75 feet. We wanted to clarify, we clarified one slight thing, which was it used to be 100 feet from, if your property was adjacent, then it was 100 feet. Which had a weird incentive of, if you split up your lots, your lot that wasn't technically adjacent wouldn't be affected. And so we clarified that so that it's 75 feet from a residential line. So on no lot, regardless of whether you're adjacent to a residential lot, could you build closer than 75 feet to a residential lot. And Wally's right, we did talk a lot about attempting to create some kind of vegetative barrier between commercial development and residential development, because in the places where, you know, where there's a big elevation, that's probably not going to make a huge difference. For me, I'm on roughly the second or second and a half story. If you went up back behind me, maybe about the third. So I don't know that a vegetative area is necessarily going to protect me, but there are places where that gap is not so high. That gap in elevation is not so high, and so we want to protect the people who are right up against commercial development. We also, from Wally had explained to us that his understanding of the existing law is that if his building burned down, he could not replace it. And, you know, I've read it, I read the code, I'm not sure I come to that conclusion, but it doesn't really matter. We wanted to be fair to existing businesses. And we, again, if people purchase lots where there's a two-story business within 75 feet of them, they did so fully understanding that there was a business within 75 feet of them. So we created essentially a grandfather-in clause so that if you have an existing building within that 75 feet that was built legally at the time and yet would be within the 75 feet if you had to rebuild it, we permitted them to do so. We permitted them to build on the same footprint of their existing building. So we're trying to be fair to everyone as best as we can, to an owner who purchased a long time ago or built a long time ago within certain set of rules, that they would really be bound essentially by those existing rules at the time, because they'd be able to rebuild in their existing footprint. The other thing this did was preserve the lots where there is current building, but would be rendered unbuildable by the 100-foot setback. So if you can imagine, for example, the lot at the intersection, at the triangle lot at the intersection of Rollingwood Drive and Bee Caves Drive. It's a very small triangular lot. All of that lot is within, or almost all of that lot is within a setback. And so that lot is essentially unbuildable under the existing rules, not under the rules that we're suggesting, but under the existing rules. And we just simply didn't think that was fair to the existing owners of those lots, that they could never do anything but, I guess, maintain their existing property. And we didn't think that was in the best interest of the community either, to have an old building that can simply be maintained. And so by allowing an owner of a commercial property to rebuild on the existing footprint, that lot now becomes buildable. just under the existing footprint, with again, the same rationale being that if someone bought nearby with that existing building there, they've already assumed that risk, that it would be, that that building would be there, and it wouldn't be unfair to them for that building at the same height to be rebuilt. Sure.
There's no house within 100 foot of that lot.
There's not of that one, but there are some others. So if you're on South Peak, there's some buildings right behind them. That
I owned the building just immediately to the east and sharing the property line with that building. And there is a residence across the street from a portion of the parking lot at the back, so that 100-foot would, I believe, be enforced without exception, unless an exception was
But
made.
that house isn't in Rolling.
I'm sorry?
That house isn't in Rolling, what you're talking about.
Okay, that's right, it isn't. It's in Westlake Hills.
Now, there is a house, there's a
It's an
residence.
old house sitting on that corner.
Adjacent to that lot, but it's actually zoned commercial. There's one, the driveway that goes
Shares the
to the
driveway.
building, that is still zoned
That's in
commercial.
Rolling.
That is in Rollingwood.
Yes, and in addition, there's an existing setback on the Rollingwood side that rebuilding on that lot would violate. So what we're trying to do is create a fairness all the way around. Allow more development, protect owners of commercial property from being unable to build on their lots, but also protect residential lots that would be affected by a change in the rules. Again, I think the only harm, arguably, that the compromise did to residential areas is for people like me, where the existing lots are further than 75 feet away. The existing commercial development, I'm sorry, is further than 75 feet away. And so we are allowing those lots, and just so you know, for all transparency, I'm right behind the Chinatown restaurant. And so by proposing this compromise, I have made it more likely that a developer will redevelop that strip mall and build 2 stories, which will significantly negatively affect my quality of life, because we would look straight down on it. But I think it's the fair thing, and the group thought it was the fair thing. And so that's what we did. So I think that's a long version, probably more than you wanted. But those are the biggest rules. We also talked about trying to get more trees. Like if there's sidewalks, we want more trees, like you've seen in the city of Austin downtown, to try to have a tree canopy everywhere. We've said that within the floodplain itself, which essentially tracks the creek, that native vegetation should not be cleared. We're okay with non-native vegetation being cleared. So there were kind of things that we walked through along the way. We'd like to have commercial lots be more mindful of the light pollution on existing Rollingwood homes. Again, I can only speak for myself, but I have to use blackout curtains in my bedroom window because it's so bright and back behind our house. Things like that that we don't think would have any negative impact on anyone, but could be a value add for our community. So that's a long, probably longer than you wanted, but that was kind of what we went through.
One other real important thing that we looked at was impervious cover. Right now, it's at 50% on BK's Road, and we're recommending that it be universally raised to 55, but with certain incentives that developers could do, you could get another 10% on that you would go with that. But this may be capturing water, with the caveat that it has to be engineered so it's not producing a flood event for either Edge Grove or for other businesses on BK's Road on that. And I'm sorry David's not here because he's our expert on FEMA and all that. But
And Brooke proposed that compromise.
Yes.
So I don't know if you wanted to talk about the
sorry.
compromise on
I think
that.
I've covered it.
All right.
The
That
other,
too was the product of discussion and
Yes.
argument and citizen input and compromise.
and you know, we have had citizens come in and they go, okay, you're gonna give an incentive to have greater impervious cover, greater setbacks. What's the penalty if they don't do it? Or if the third owner doesn't do it down the line? And there are fairly stiff penalties that we're recommending a couple things. The city already has this authority. One would be a daily fine, $2,000 daily. And then ultimately, if it's not fixed, they could get their CO pulled on that. So it's pretty stiff. We're not recommending that the city have to do anything. We're just recommending that if we give incentives on this and they don't do it, don't live up to it, then the city should exercise their rights to ensure that that they do it, or that there's substantial penalties on that. And we did have residents that asked us to make sure that we emphasized the penalties on that part of it, which we've done. So.
The only thing I would add is that we did add some criteria for landscaping and particularly shade on sidewalks in the commercial area to encourage, the residents of the community really want more walk areas, more areas they can walk to, and they want shade on there. So those are in the incentives also.
In that regard, one of the things that just kept coming through is our residents want to be able to have pedestrian, bike, I guess golf cart, access to BK's Road on that. In Edge Grove Drive, the city actually has some right-of-way that's not being utilized on Edge Grove Drive. And of course, this would entail also fixing the Edge Grove Drive bridge to allow people to get over to BK's Road on that. So that kept, I think that was a big part. Every survey, Ryan, that was a big response from our residents on that.
I agree, Tom. I should have mentioned that. One of the things that was really loud and clear through the citizens' communications to us is they wanted a better connected commercial district. And so we kind of we played around and looked at everywhere there could possibly be a connection. Obviously, it can be connected at Rollingwood Drive, but that's kind of at the end of it. It could be connected at Edge Grove Drive better. And so what we have recommended is a path along Edge Grove Drive that would be more segregated a little bit, so it'd be safer. I mean, I don't think anybody would allow their kids to walk down Edge Grove Drive right now. And so we've recommended that a path be placed along Edge Grove Drive that would be safe for people to walk or bike to the commercial district. We've also recommended that the city reach out to TxDOT and look for creative ways to make crossing BK's Road there more safe. We don't know exactly what those are. We didn't want to micromanage that process. But certainly we all thought that, again, would you want your kids crossing there? Probably not right now. Is there a safe way to do it in the short term and in the long term? We even threw out as a long-term strategy a potential pedestrian bridge across BK's Road. And then on the back side of the properties on the north side of BK's Road, a lot of those are backing up to what is Dry Creek, Eanes Creek, whatever you want to call it. And so we've encouraged in the process of development of those lots to put pathways on the back of their properties, and so that people can walk either on the front, along the front of the property, or along the back and have kind of a wooded, more peaceful view. We would love to see restaurants have chairs and tables on the back side. So imagine a Chinatown that's a little bit closer to BK's Road, but also has some seating out back along the creek. I mean, that's the kind of things that we envision for a future of Rollingwood that I think everybody would be happier with.
You mentioned the TxDOT, the bridge on BK is still unknown, and likewise, Edge Grove needs a bridge someday so that we have safe access.
That's right.
Do y'all have any comments or any ideas about getting that done?
I don't know about getting it done, but it is the number one. BK's Road and then Edge Grove Drive are the 1 and 2, I think, problems noted for drainage throughout it's not in this section of it, but it's in the utilities section. We placed we asked the citizens what they want in Rollingwood, what they want to fix, what they don't like. By and large, drainage was the issue that was prioritized as the issue that people wanted fixed. And those two are the number one and number two, I think, identified by the city's current utilities plan. So all we could do is promote and elevate the citizen concern of, yes, the citizens want these fixed very badly, but no, as far as an implementation of that, we didn't have anything.
So one of the things that one ace in the hole that Rollingwood has in regard to Edgegrove Drive is that we, the city, own 5 acres there that's behind those commercial businesses that goes from Edgegrove all the way to BK's Road.
Basically the creek.
Yeah.
Well, we actually own both sides of the creek there, but we have that now. A good portion of that is in the floodplain, needless to say, most of it, almost all of it.
Yeah.
There's actually a little bit that's not, you know.
Little
But
triangle.
I think, and Amber, I'm a little foggy on this, but some years ago, we commissioned our city engineers to go in and look at designing a drainage plan or a channelization plan to where you would be able to take that out of the floodplain, so that could be used for as a means of maybe parking or something that would be coming in on the commercial side of BK's Road there. So and we do have we do have right of way that the city owns on at least a good portion, I think, of Edgegrove Drive, and it may be 20 feet. If I remember correctly, but it's, I'm sorry, it's been years since I looked at that, but I think it's 20 feet, isn't it, Amber, do you remember?
It could be, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, but it's it's substantial enough to be utilized as an access road. Now, that is a project that RCDC could take a look at doing on that, to get there. on
Drainage
that.
is obviously the issue with that space.
Well, and then you'd have to engineer it, and there's no question about that. And a pedestrian bridge, at the very least, over Dry Creek.
Right.
Could be another, because that is, that was one of the high points I thought that everybody really wanted. Did we able to find that? Oh,
And there was
let's just
one
go.
more place, Tom, I wanted to mention, that of potential connection between the residential and commercial areas, and that is the existing park that the city of Austin owns at the end of Rollingwood Drive near the access road to Mopac. At the back of the park, you can access Delano Lane, which is currently a mostly unused pathway that connects from there to the redevelopment, the Endeavor development down there. And many of us have walked it, and it's a very pretty walk. And we've recommended that the city reach out to the city of Austin and see if there's some way we could get an easement across the park to essentially create a walking path from Rollingwood all the way down to the commercial district there. Even in the future, potentially it could be a golf cart path, because we know Rollingwood residents love their golf carts. So how cool would it be if you could drive your golf cart to a restaurant down in the commercial area?
Yeah. One of our residents produced a little, more than just a slideshow. She did quite a bit of work on this, but this was Imagine Rollingwood that she had done, which it'll be in our report. So as an attachment, this whole report the whole schematic she did on that. But I thought this was kind of you might want to just scroll through and see if there's any questions or something. Yes, I thought that was a great little presentation she did. Impressed me. Impressed. So I think there was another schematic she did of a drawing, that, something like that we have as our main street. So, I thought it was a kind of a neat little program that, was shown. So that will be in our report also on that. So, any other comments or questions? And I know y'all don't have a copy of
job.
this, so, as you do, just let us know and we'll try to answer it and see what we can do on that. But I would, if you're looking for what suggestions as to what, how RCDC might implement this, you know, we can kind of go around and see if anybody, I've got one, but if anybody else has one, that might work on that.
Go ahead, Tom.
You know, when the city council implements this or accepts this comprehensive plan, our commercial real estate, commercial developers are not gonna know anything about it for the most part. So I thought there would be a possible benefit to Rollingwood if RCDC either hired a commercial real estate agent as representing RCDC to promote this plan, or a public relations firm to do the same thing, where they market it to commercial realtors and retail developers on that. But no bank developers, please.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we realized fairly early on is that what everybody wants is retail, and that's kind of the hardest thing to get developers to put in.
Yeah.
Because we simply don't have the density that justifies. And I personally, and I think probably most people share this, everybody wants restaurants, but it's not like you can just force or convince a restaurant to go in your district. They're responding to demand and density. And if they can't make their numbers work, they can't make their numbers work. So we've tried our best to expand the opportunities for development. We've made it so that our recommendation is that any lot in the commercial district can have either office or retail. We recommended, we were told by the city council, and most of us agree, I think, that no building should be bigger than 2 stories on the north side of Bee Caves Road. And then on the south side, we had a little bit of a split vote, but ultimately the vote was to have up to 3 stories on the south side of Bee Caves Road. So that will allow for a little bit more development. And we did not exclude places where there are already existing PUDs. So for example, if you just think about where Trader Joe's is, if you take a left at Trader Joe's, there's a series of 1-story, there's like a doctor's office that's 1 story, there's a 1-story gym. There's literally a 3-story building back behind them. So why they would be limited to 1 story doesn't really make a lot of sense, so long as the light pollution would not affect people across the street. And so if we can deal with the light pollution and allow up to 3 stories there, we can have a win-win for everybody. We can get more opportunities for retail probably there, and more opportunity to increase revenues without having a negative impact on the residents, which was really what our goal was.
Yeah, I think there were 2 other recommendations we have in here. One is that the city review its sign ordinance and update it, because quite frankly, a lot of the material that we require, I don't think they're making it anymore. So it's probably time to revise that. The second thing was on the light pollution, a recommendation that they have to have security lights, and certainly parking, they have to have security lights outside and in. But generally leaving these buildings bright all night for convenience, I think Wally was...
Part of the heating system in many high-rises is tied to the fact they burn the electricity 24/7.
Yeah.
Heating and cooling combined with the lighting gives them a higher efficiency rating. So they light the building all night. And that's detrimental if you live within 2 blocks of the building and look up and your backyard is bright and shiny all night long.
Yeah, that was a new one on me, but that, but I think that can be resolved. But that's been one of the problems we've had for our residents that commented on light pollution coming from the buildings, on the other side of Bee Cave Road. And Brian, of course, has the same issue where he is on
Yeah.
that.
So quick question, two quick questions. Was this plan or the recommendations taken to, for example, a real estate agency or sat down with them from more of a perspective of, as a city, we're trying to go in this direction, do you see any red flags or hiccups?
So I sit on this committee as a member of the Westlake Chamber of Commerce, but my day job is commercial real estate as
Cool.
well.
Great.
And so I think Wally made a lot of great points, and every once in a while Tom asks my opinion, and I give it for whatever it's
Yeah.
worth. But I think, you know, the Ryan's point, this community is largely residential, right? That's the majority of what's here. And so protecting that residential integrity is very important. But the compromise is then how, because, you know, developers want
Yeah.
sky rises as big as they can get them, but that's not good for the residential.
Right.
So I do think that this is certainly an improvement over the existing
Yeah,
conditions.
no, for sure.
And, you know, 2 to 3 stories of density, you know, may or may not incentivize redevelopment at some point, but, you know, that's gonna be a lot by lot, case by case, property owner by property owner, developer by developer, day by day, year by year, that equation changes constantly. So I think it's a healthy compromise.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
And we did also have real estate developers
Yeah.
come and speak to us. We had a whole meeting listening to real estate developers. And
Didn't get to listen to all the meetings, I tried.
yeah, and to be honest, to be fair, you know, the feedback from them is we want to go 5 stories.
Yeah.
And I think that would be, that is not on the table in Rollingwood.
Right.
That people are going to have 5-story buildings
Sure.
behind them. So, yeah, I do think that we all have to acknowledge that we do not expect in 10 years for all of Bee Caves Road to be redeveloped.
Yeah.
But as new owners come in, and they want to do something different with scenarios, for example, the hospital district is kind of a prime opportunity for something else and something bigger and something different. The church, we of course don't want to kick the church out, but that is another prime opportunity for something bigger and something different. It's a huge lot. It's on the access road. I mean, the major opportunities there. There are some smaller opportunities along Bee Caves Road. Certainly the existing PUDs are opportunities because Rollingwood was more restrictive when those PUDs were built than we are now. And so I think those are the opportunities that they're more likely to get flipped quicker. But we had to come up with a compromise because simply 5-story buildings all across Rollingwood was just not going to happen, right?
Yeah, if the question is, do you want a 5-story building to get a restaurant? The answer was no.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
So,
That's fair.
yeah.
Now, I will say, one of the other issues we looked at was the infrastructure availability, water and wastewater primarily on that. And that's been raised as a concern.
Right.
And we did have, the city engineers did some analysis for us and determined we do have capacity both in water and wastewater to be able to implement a plan on Bee Caves Road on that. So that was good to know. The pipe sizes are sufficient so that we're not gonna have to tear up everything to be able to handle that. So.
Tom, do you want to speak to the water issue? That was our main issue, is the potential for the city of Austin to sweep the rug out on water.
Well, Austin had, they redid the contract, renegotiated the contract some time ago. It wasn't that long ago. And Austin inserted a provision, which in all honesty they replaced a contract that gave us basically 30 years with another 30 years option with just a 30-year supply. We do have an extension ability on that. But they put a provision in that said that if at a certain time, which I think is next year maybe, or 2 years, soon,
2030.
2030,
Yes.
be here before we know it. they can require us to find our own raw water source. Now, they'll treat it and everything, which means is we have to pay we may have to pay LCRA, or it doesn't mean they'll ever use it, but we have to have the capacity. And, you know, we've got several options. We can obviously say we're gonna take groundwater and get us, we can secure groundwater rights in the aquifer here. We could wheel water from western Travis County, through Westlake Hills, and then we would have that capacity. There's a lot of options. You know, recommendation that we have in here is that the city should not wait for 2030 to come up, but should start working on identifying those sources now, so that we're not rushed to get it and you pay whatever you have to pay. Make the best deal, and that gives us time to get that done. So that's there. City of Austin is going to to require that. So we have to do that. So we're gonna have, but that's true. One of the reasons they put that in there is TCQ has made that a requirement of cities going forward anyway. So that's already, we'd probably have to do it regardless of what the contract said when it got down to it. So, y'all understood?
Yeah.
Sometimes I wander. Anyway, that's just something, it's down the road, but still, it's surprising when you're trying to locate water, how long it takes to be able to figure out where it's coming from on that. And you don't wanna wait till a drought comes in before you go look for water. You wanna do it
Exactly.
when we have the lakes full, cause it gets to be a lot easier. We're not gonna have to build a water treatment plant here. You know, Austin will treat the water, and it's a paper transaction for the most part from their standpoint. So,
But does the city of Austin pay LCRA for water?
about, somewhere in 2004, the city of Austin paid LCRA $100 million for water rights out of the Colorado River, Lake Travis. So they have to pay for the water usage, but they don't have to, they have secured the water rights to that.
Right.
So. I can't remember the exact date, but Kurt Watson was mayor. I do remember that.
Okay.
So whatever date that was. So. Any other suggestions anybody would like to make to the RCDC? Yes, sir.
Well-
One more question is about Bee Caves Road and the widening and the sidewalks that aren't from Rollingwood Drive and Bee Caves down to the business section here. There's no sidewalks at all.
That's
either
correct.
side. Is anything gonna happen on that?
When Bee Cave Road is extended for that little section,
Yeah.
which we had, it's been on again, off again for the last 20 years. Right now, the latest is, we don't have any money, and you're not on the top tier to get that done. It doesn't, my experience with TxDOT, when we did the first section of Bee Caves Road, we were not on their top tier list of getting that done. And, so that doesn't really mean a lot. I think they changed that around some. But that's something that, will require, quite a bit. Now, I think one big change on that, Amber, correct me, didn't TxDOT agree that they would acquire the right-of-way?
They did, yeah, they would
It's a
help us.
major
Yes.
deal. Cause we had to acquire the right-of-way on the first section of Bee Caves Road. So that's a big number, and we didn't, it was all dedicated to us, but, still, that's hard to do. So that is that's a big plus that they agreed to do that. And TxDOT has a plan that they have proposed, that they wanna have a, reverse lane of the center turn lane for, peak traffic periods. Well, it doesn't work if you don't have a middle lane, so,
Yeah.
you know, so I suspect that as that traffic increases, and they think they wanna do that in 5 or 6 or 10 years, that they would, probably wanna finish out that roadway. It's beneficial to our city for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is from Dry Creek to Rollingwood Drive on the north side of BK's Road, we have not extended sewer to those properties. And because we didn't know where the right of way was gonna be, and we didn't have room to put it until they decided where they were gonna put the road. So it looks like the last plan that I saw, they have moved the roadway more to the south than they used to have it at the north on that. But I think those businesses, it would benefit them. Wally, you've got,
I'd love to move my driveway.
yes.
I'm
And
ready and willing to move it anytime they tell me where the road's gonna be.
so, that's, you know, we're in kind of a hold on it. Now, one of the things that RCDC could get involved in that, maybe, I don't know what the legality of that is, but one of the reasons that we were able to move TxDOT on that first section of BK's Road was we had a public relations deal with the Chamber of Commerce to, for BK's Road that said that it wasn't safe, and we had all the businesses contact TxDOT. We had moms and everybody, you may remember, that was a big event that we did, and that and the fact that we were able to find some money that TxDOT's got more pockets than you could ever imagine, where they have stuffed money, and the money for BK's Road originally came from a pocket of money that they had reserved for the city of Boston to expand Koenig Lane from Mopac to Airport Boulevard. And it'd been 15 years at that time where they'd kept this money in a pocket, and it was apparent that that was never gonna happen. So that's where the money came from. So.
One more note on that is the existing code, as I understand it, requires a driveway on every commercial lot, and we're scrapping that, so that to encourage businesses to not you didn't have to have a driveway on every little lot. You know, every little lot has its own driveway. Imagine where the Mr. Gaddy's used to be. It has its own driveway. You know, it's a tiny little lot. It doesn't need its own driveway. There's no setbacks on the sides, which I didn't know that. So those buildings could be together if they wanted to be. It would make a lot more sense for a strip of those buildings to all redevelop at the same time, and have one driveway for the entire section rather than 4 or 5 tiny little lots, each with their own driveway.
Paul, you have?
No,
Yeah. I would, any other questions? I would suggest that, we'll make sure y'all get a copy of this draft. We're gonna go through it, one more time here, and we got some edits to do, but once we get that, I would suggest if, especially these sections on that, if you look at that, if there's something that pops up, you know, please feel free to let us know. We're
Bring it up.
glad to meet with y'all, and see that. But, this is, you know, our goals are all the same. We wanna promote BK's Road as our main street. We wanna have some renovation going on BK's Road, and we want the type of development that would enable all of us to lower our, to have more revenue with less taxes that come in on that. We'd rather be sales tax on that. So, and RCDC's got some opportunities, I think, to implement part of this through Edge Grove, Delano Lane, and surprisingly, the City of Austin City of Austin Parks, I think it's Parks Foundation, and the owners of the Rollingwood Town Center, Endeavor's buildings there, have all agreed that they would contribute to help do something there at Delano Lane. Now, you know, we've got neighbors that would be affected, and we have to be cognizant of the impact on them right there, because that is a pretty, I mean, it basically goes at the back of their lot on that. But, you know, that's true of even a path behind the buildings that we have at Big Cave Road. But, anything that we can answer or help or clarify, we'll be glad to do, on that. And, RCDC is, you know, got, I think, some opportunities on Big Cave Road to make a positive difference for the city on that. So,
Right.
any other questions?
No, thank y'all very much.
So why don't we do this, just for the record, if you wanna just adjourn the meeting, or you, and then we've gotta
Okay.
open ours.
We will close this joint meeting at, what is it, 5:05? All in favor, say aye. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate it.
Hopefully this is one of many.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Emily? Yeah.
Ronald,
she's
you
gotta
wanna come
start-
up?
Start that. I'm gonna let you